just right. There's not enough time to get this. Oh God, see, and I can't even, now we're teeny tiny people.
So you're live now?
We are live, yes.
We are live. Hello, hello. Try to find everybody.
Yeah, see where everybody's at. Try to get it all centered up. Oh, and then I got to reorient the screen.
Look really small next to this beautiful picture here.
I got yelled at. There was a video editor that's like, make Mike move the camera. I'm not good at this, guys. I'm just not good at it. So, well, good. Is it afternoon? Good.
It is.
It's morning in New Mexico, afternoon the rest of the country.
Nice and windy.
It's blustery, getting some spring weather in. I'm excited about it changing for us. I'm here with Shane Cates from Century 21 Sowesco. That's here in Farmington, New Mexico. Right? That's how it's all stringed together. Century 21.
Stringed together. It's kind of hard for people to pronounce, but we just kind of have to spell it out for people. But
you roll with it.
Welcome to our home here in Farmington, right across from the post office, right next to Blake's.
Yeah, you guys have been here for a long time. You've been doing real estate for how long now?
I'm going a little over 2 years, so okay. I still consider myself a newbie. What I've learned is there's a lot to learn. And
absolutely.
If you're not constantly keeping up with the new forms, the new laws, it can get overwhelming. But it's been awesome. It's been awesome so far.
When we went and had coffee, we had a lot of great bullet points that some of my realtors that I interviewed, they didn't bring up, and I was really excited about it. When we jumped right into it, I asked, what things need to be fixed in the industry or what problems do you have? You brought up feedback on showings. Can you expand on that? Like, what did you mean by getting feedback on showings?
Definitely. Well, first I would say is I'm probably one of the first to admit that I was horrible at giving feedback when I would take a buyer to a appointment. Not giving the proper feedback to the listing agent and the seller is huge. It kind of sets expectations for that seller and the possible listing, a broker, just to kind of give that feedback on what people are liking, what they're thinking about the house. Okay. What the market itself might be saying to that seller.
Right.
It kind of helps. I want to say it probably helps selling agents and buying agents.
Like, it would be a seller telling you, hey, well, I didn't like this about the house and like this. So the buyer's agent knows, okay, I need to find something different. But then the listing agent, when they get that feedback, they can say, okay, the market's generally looking for more carpet, or they're looking for less open concept, some specifics that may change as the market seasons change.
Right.
Okay. And so that's helpful when they go see the houses. So they're not criticizing, they're not saying what's bad about the house, they're just saying what's not for them, or maybe what they really liked.
Yeah.
And that'll help the listing agents know what's out there, and then you can share that with the sellers.
Definitely.
And the sellers can understand, because we've got some sellers that they have a lot of their heart and their soul and their sweat into the house, and they have a high value, and they see something that's just wonderful, and then you get buyers that are like, that doesn't matter to us whatsoever.
It could totally flip. And
yeah,
I think as a buyer broker, just getting the information from your buyer is going to also help you kind of maybe say, hey, well, this house has this that you liked, or this that you didn't like.
Right.
And kind of help with that process with the buyer. But I think it's huge for a seller to get that feedback. Just, if they want to make some small changes,
sure,
to help get that property sold, or, if it's a lot of times it might be the price of the condition of the home itself. And that kind of helps with the seller agent as well. Just kind of give that feedback to the seller. It's not just them telling the seller. It's, hey, we had a broker open. I had 15 brokers come in, and they all kind of pointed at the same thing. What do you think about how we could change it?
Now, what does that lean towards, as far as we had mentioned adverse material facts? Is that in the same line, or is that maybe a different conversation? Because when I think of feedback you're getting from brokers, you're getting from buyers that are looking at the house, they're just kind of maybe looking at the aesthetics and the feel. But what's the difference between that and disclosing adverse material facts? Because you had brought that up at coffee as well.
Well, for me, what I like to do before I take a buyer to a home is we'll email them the adverse material facts, just because in that form there's a lot of things that you're going to find out about that house if the seller's disclosing it.
Okay.
So if we already know that there's a drywall patch from a leak, in a hose somewhere underneath the sink,
okay,
you're already going to tell that buyer, hey, this is what happened. It's already been fixed, instead of the buyer going in and just kind of being shocked and, like scared. They've already kind of known some of these aspects of the home.
So that's more of a disclosure from the seller, flat out saying, hey, I know there's things that you might see that might scare you off. I've already either addressed it or we're planning to fix it.
Yep.
That way they don't get this feeling of somebody hiding something or somebody trying to get away with, hey, don't look under that cabinet. So it's giving the buyer a better sense of, okay, they're aware of the problem, so I'm not shocked by it, and they get a bad taste in their mouth.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I think when the adverse material facts disclosure is, if you've got a seller that's lived in the house for 10 years and there's nothing on that form, it's like, nothing happened in past 10 years.
Well, and maybe
it might have been fixed.
Sure, but you want to let them know about it, so that way you're like, hey, this had happened, and if you see this little piece of drywall tape that I notice every day when I walk by and it's bubbled, I fixed the leak. It's just I tried to get a really smooth drywall job and I just can't.
Yeah, I'm not the pro.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll be laying down and I'll look up in the bedroom like, man, that was a really bad drywall job I did.
Yeah. Oh man, I've done a few.
Okay. Perfect. So moving on in our conversation, you were talking about buyer's broker agreement, buyer's brokers and really researching what your buyers need. You were talking about, we had discussed buyer brokers not setting up expectations or not being upfront. I mean, what hurdles are you seeing in that, or what things have you learned in your 2 years that make it easier as a buyer's broker?
When the law changed, I was a brand new broker, so I didn't really, obviously the buyer broker agreement's been around for a long time, but it was never something that you had to have a contract just to look at a house. So a lot of people are still finding out that you have to get into a contract with a buyer broker just to even look at houses.
Right.
So, in those initial stages of when that law changed, I want to say August 2024, you had a lot of hesitation with buyers, meeting them at a property. You used to be able to call up, say, hey, let's go look at this house, and you meet them there and
put on some shorts, some slippers, you're there, exactly. No big deal.
And it might be the first time you've ever talked to that person. Well, it's kind of intimidating when you bring that form where, hey, we got to sign a contract. So the first couple times were hard for me just because I was a brand new broker and still kind of understanding the form itself. But being able to overcome, it was already just a wall right when you met them. So now I like to set up appointments, kind of go over that contract, because it is a contract, and explain it as well as I can. One instance I had during an offer is, I was a mistake of mine that I'll never forget. I didn't ask if the seller was willing to pay compensation, so we made the offer. During that negotiation, we found out that they weren't wanting to pay any buyer compensation.
Right.
So that was a tough conversation I had with my buyer, which they weren't really in the position to pay that. So I think just kind of really reiterating how that's going to be paid, what steps you're going to take to make sure that everybody's kind of on the same page with that, I think creates a lot of trust and comfort there.
Sure. Because you're getting the hard stuff out of the way up front. You say, look, all these different people have to get paid. Me as a buyer's broker, I do have a compensation I have to make. And if we can't negotiate that into the deal, I still have this bill that has to be paid, and that falls on your shoulders as a buyer.
Yep.
Is this something you're able to do? Yep. And you understand if they're not, and you can say, cool, well then we have to really make sure the seller is able to compensate me. so that way I can take care of you and still get paid for my services. It seems easy, but when you're looking at somebody saying, all right, you're going to write a contract and you're going to make sure I get paid.
Yeah.
They're like, I just wanted to look at a house, man. That's
exactly.
That can be tough. Okay.
And the process already is intimidating enough.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, they maybe never bought a house, or they bought a house, but it's been a while. They didn't have this form 40 years ago.
All right. Exactly.
All right. Well, that you had mentioned setting up with the buyer's broker agreement, sitting down, painting a picture. And then you had brought up a question about a cohabitation investment. And I wanted to ask, because we didn't talk about this at coffee. You dropped that on me just now. I'm excited to hear it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
Well, I'm probably sure we'll maybe go back into this, but I do property management as well. And we have 4 brokers that do the property management in our office, or with Sowesco Property Management, which is affiliated with Century 21.
Okay.
Sowesco Realty. Which is, I mean, we'll go into the broker's 200 years experience, but that's one thing that kind of brought me to Century 21, just asking around like, hey, what do you think of Century 21? Obviously the brand's been here for 79 years. We're worldwide. But it was the answers I got from other realtors on the knowledge in the office, the contracts themselves, how particular the QB is, which I liked. You know,
she's got her door closed, so hopefully she's watching and writing notes.
But being in a position at property management, I get a lot of feedback from renters. I might be the only real estate broker that actually goes and meets possible tenants at our rentals, so I get a lot of exposure to people that, you know, are trying to rent, have never rented before, people from moving out of the country. But we'll get back into that. What cohabitation investment is I don't know if a lot of people really realize is that, you know, some people think you have to be married to get a mortgage, or you don't have to be married.
Right.
You can kind of put this together is you have a lot of renters that are kind of low income.
Okay.
So if they're in an apartment and they're paying $700 to $800 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment,
yeah,
maybe they're renting with a buddy or a family member or a friend, and they just get that sticker shock when they figure, you know, a mortgage is going to be twice as much as what we're paying.
Right.
Well, when I get in to my meetings with new buyers, there's a lot of different options, and it's not just them. And if I get into a situation to where, hey, I pay $600 a month and he pays $600 a month, on my own, I just can't afford $1,200 to $1,500 a month.
Right.
Well, maybe as a problem solver,
yeah,
think outside the box a little bit.
Right.
So cohabitation investment, maybe you both invest in a property, whether it's a residential, maybe a multifamily duplex to where you're staying in one side and you're renting out the other to keep that cost down.
Right.
And, you know, until maybe your income comes up. But that can be kind of tricky. Definitely got to make sure you're getting into who's holding the title, if it's going to be a joint tenancy with rights or survivorship kind of situation, which means, you know, if one person dies, the other person gets the property, or if it may be a tenancy in common where, you know, both might have equal share in the property or unequal share in the property. And then each person can kind of designate who inherits that share of that property.
Okay.
So, and that's something that would probably a lawyer would probably write up for you.
Right.
And you probably want to get like a cohabitation agreement that just kind of says, outlining what happens if that relationship kind of goes downhill or breaks up, or
so it's almost like writing prenuptials between roommates.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing possible on this one. Okay.
And you see a lot of folks that aren't married and they've been together for a while.
Sure.
That could be in that situation as well. Or, maybe you have an uncle that helped you out and you guys kind of split ways or whatnot. Sure. But that agreement's just really going to help you with how that equity is going to be divided up, within a potential sale, or if they want to turn it into a rental or whatnot. But
it's got more of a long-term plan figured out. It's, you start from, I'm living in an apartment, I'm covering my portion of the rent, and it's easy at this dollar amount, but you want to get into a property, you want to invest and start building wealth.
Yep.
But you're unable to, or that sticker shock's just too much. So having somebody else, and I think the phrase a lot of people use is the cosign, but it's not just cosigning. It's more than that. It's
cohabitation.
You've got somebody else coming in to live in the house with you. You guys are going to, build on this together and build that equity together. Having that agreement actually really cuts down a lot of the, unifs or what ifs and unknowns out there. So, okay. And you had mentioned, as far as sticker shock, and this is what really stood out to me when we went to coffee, was that, with your property management experience and exposure, you're seeing that residential rentals, houses that are for rent, their monthly expenses going up, and it's pretty close to some mortgages that are out there.
Right.
But then we get the apartment renters, right? The ones that just have a space to live, sleep, eat, but the rest of the area around them is not theirs, right? It's shared compound of other houses, other rentals, and that sticker shock is, in my mind, it's completely different.
Yeah.
And when I get those interviews with buyers, they tell me, well, I'm renting for $600 a month. I'm like, that's amazing. I'm about to blow your mind right now with how much a house is going to cost you. And those are things that it shook me. I was like, I had not considered that. In my mind, rent is rent, but what you're getting in an apartment versus what you're getting in a house that you're renting are going to be two different items. In our smaller area, we don't have as many condos.
Right.
So that's where, going from an apartment to owning a house is a huge jump.
Oh, yeah.
But in those bigger cities where you can go to a condo or a townhome community where you have all these other amenities that come with some of your expense, it may be a little bit easier to digest. But out here, we don't have as many. So it was huge. But then going back to renting and qualifying for renting, we've talked about paying for it. But you had mentioned that there's some rental management companies, they have a minimum credit score, which is, I think that's the first I've actually heard of it, but I haven't paid attention to it because I'm in lending. So you talked about scores and credit qualifying for renting. I mean, can you expand on that at all?
Yeah. So, our office policy, which is awesome, we're doing a minimum credit score of 620.
Okay.
Your income, and that can be combined household income, 2.5 times what the rent is. They're going to do a credit check. They're going to do a background check. They're going to do a rental history, which some people, they live with relatives their whole life. So not one thing's going to totally nix you out of it. But what that minimum credit score is a lot of renters don't realize that you could probably qualify for a house.
I was going to say, everything you just went through, I'm like, that's like qualifying for a mortgage. That's pre-qualifying for almost everything. I mean, some of the terms are different, but the numbers are lining up. And in some places, different lenders have different overlays, but for less than 620 credit scores, you could purchase a house.
Yeah.
The debt to income ratio, you had mentioned 2.5 times the income. We go a different direction with looking at gross income and hitting it with a percentage, and it's kind of a gray area depending on certain things. So I mean, it could be, I'm not going to say easier, but it could be more worthwhile for them to look at buying a house versus trying to just qualify to rent a place.
Right.
It's not for everybody, for sure. Like you said, you got some people that are moving, some people that are just here short term.
Right. Contract.
Right.
They just might be here a year. And renting and buying, there's always, some people aren't ready.
Yeah.
To buy, and just every situation is different.
Right.
But having that conversation getting the knowledge to a lot of the renters is what I'm really trying to get out there.
Yeah.
And we'll probably go into that a little bit later.
We had talked about it. You had said that, you really like where you're at because as a person in the property management, you're able to start solving a problem for them years down the road.
Yep.
You get them into a house, you get them taken care of, you become that trustworthy person. That way in the future, they can come back to you and you can help them buy a house, buy their first.
Exactly.
And that's, I think, a big hurdle in our industry where, you call somebody and say, hey, I want to go look at a house. Well, some stranger says, hey, now you have to guarantee that I'm going to get paid my compensation versus, I've been working with these kids for years, right? I helped them into their first rental, helped them fix that AC that was a pain for them.
Exactly.
And now they're like, hey, I'm ready to buy
every
a house.
Problem they've had.
And so you're the trustworthy person. Yeah. And I think that's huge in our industry. We talked about communication and connecting with people. And that's the key is, maybe it's not right now, but I can still be helpful. I can be of service to you now.
Oh yeah.
So
no, I think can find that rare niche you call it, being able to be in that position to have access to, I want to say we have over 450 rentals. So I'm in a unique spot here to start, even at the first time I'm showing them a rental.
Right.
To say, this is my plan. Where are you at? This is what, just kind of getting that knowledge out there.
Right. Start up front and say, oh, if you're planning on buying real soon, we can keep you on a portal where you can see what's happening in the market, where we can stay in contact versus some of those are like, I just want to rent for the next 7 to 10 years. I don't want to have any responsibilities. You had just talked about a buyer consultation for a gentleman that hasn't bought a house in the number. I didn't write the number down. How long has it been since he bought a house?
Last time he owned a house was 50 years ago.
Holy cow. And how old is he now?
Fairly old.
Okay. 50 years ago, and he's coming to you for a purchase. So, I mean, in that consultation, what kind of questions would he have? Because, 50 years ago, man, see, I don't want to put a date on it.
Interesting. I was scared before that,
okay.
that consultation.
Okay.
He called me. We really didn't get along really in that phone call. And that's what I tell people in these consultations, interview brokers. I might not be the right fit for you.
Okay.
I can't get along with everybody. So I had talked to him on the phone. It was a little defensive, being 20 years in sales. Sometimes I can kind of squeeze a little bit sometimes, but I knew going into that consultation that I really had to just kind of dial everything back,
right?
And just no pressure, which all of them are, which I've really enjoyed. By the time I have the first consultation, beginning of the meeting, by the time all of them leave, they just have a big smile on their face. And whether it turns into something down the line, kind of getting that game plan. But this gentleman, things had happened in his life to where he wasn't in a position to buy, and he felt like he was in a position to buy. So we kind of went over the whole buying process. I kind of like to have a 10-15 minute conversation about them just to get to know them.
Yeah.
But getting to know them, going through the home buying process, I got a chart that we go over a lot of different things, answer a lot of questions.
Right.
But in this certain situation, we always talk about different kind of loan programs that help. Well, at the end of this, he said, well, I'm paying cash. Okay.
Cut out 20 minutes of conversation. Why do we have to go through that?
Okay. And I kind of had an idea on what range he wanted to be in. Okay. We kind of looked at the current listings on the market and just kind of diving in. I'm like, what he can really afford with his, retirement budget isn't much.
Okay.
So maybe finding something that he can pay cash for and not have a monthly payment might work for him.
Yeah.
So I was like, with everything that we've looked at, how are you feeling? It's like, well, I don't really like anything. I was like, sir, you can buy a brand new home. How? Well, I have this friend that I'm going to refer you to with the price range that you're saying. You can get some land, you can get a brand new. And I'm saying I would love to sell you a home,
right?
But I want to give you all your options,
right?
And if and he still might go through me to get a site built,
sure.
But just giving him that option, he didn't even think about it. He was just so happy.
Yeah,
it was just
So knowing that he had a chance, knowing he had something possible for him, it gave him more, which, painted you in a great picture, because you weren't focusing on the sale of it all. You were focusing on getting him what he was looking for.
Right.
So you were able to look past the one transaction and create that relationship that was necessary for him to get what he needed.
Right.
But that just makes him, a lifetime connection with you, because then he can come back to you with any other questions, knowing that you're not out just to get that one sale out of him in that one moment.
Definitely.
Okay, great.
I mean, I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has, and if I don't know, I will find out.
Sure,
for sure.
Well, and you had mentioned that's part of the in the 2 years you've been doing this already. One of the things you learned, or at least you've held on to, is you have to have the confidence to ask the scary questions, ask the hard questions. Because you've got to get the answers, for the people that need them.
Right.
So, being fearless on asking those questions is probably going to be helpful. Cool. Well, did we see any comments come through on anything? I don't know if I've got any in there.
There's a few that joined. Don't see any comments yet, but hey, we got a few minutes to get your questions in.
Absolutely.
We'd love to try to answer for you.
Perfect. Let's see. And so what else did I note? One of the last things that we did talk about is the costs that are out there. And now that's a big question. Up front, you have to disclose your compensation as a buyer's broker. You can say, look, we got to get paid. This is generally what we charge.
Right.
So that's the first kind of, hey, there's a fee involved. Hopefully it can get covered by something else in the transaction.
Exactly.
But then you had jumped into those conversations about zero down. It's kind of a mislabel.
Right.
Because there's extra closing costs. So what closing costs or what fees or what things do we need buyers to prepare for just in case they come up?
Right. Well, it starts off with just giving them knowledge. When I do my consultations, I really like to show them the process and how each step will affect the next. So big thing is your pre-qualification letter. Right. Because that's going to let you know what options you might have as far as your loan, whether it's FHA, conventional, or USDA.
Right.
Because it's going to set up how you're going to structure that offer.
Right.
Who's going to pay for the compensation. Now there's the compensation aspect of it. So say you get a FHA, you get down payment assistance.
Yeah.
And you don't have to come up with anything for your down payment.
Right.
Well, you have your down payment, you have your closing costs, right? Which are typical in a transaction. Well, maybe with the loan that you have, maybe you can ask the seller to help contribute those, so maybe it looks like there's nothing down or little money down.
Sure.
But you're always going to have, throughout that process, you're going to have costs that are going to come up that you really can't get around, which are your inspection costs.
Sure.
And everything can be negotiated in a deal, but there are going to be some costs if you can't get your closing cost coverage, and that's going to be your property taxes, your mortgage loan origination fees, different fees that you have that I like to have that upfront conversation with.
Talking to everybody involved about what to be expected. And that's the weird part is you'll see different people and they'll look at a contract or they'll look at a negotiation and they'll focus on one part, and that one part sounds really good. Zero down. That sounds great. I pay no money.
Right.
Okay, hang on.
But there's going to be
there could be more money. We have to look at where it's possible that there is money.
Could be your earnest money.
Right. You're spending some kind of money to put whole deposit to hold the house.
Right.
And then New Mexico's new independent consideration.
Which is anything over $1. I mean, anything worth of value. I mean, it could be 2 chickens and a carton of eggs if you want.
that's money though. That's got
You're big
tons
on
of cash.
protein and working out a lot.
If you go to the grocery store lately, eggs are still pricey.
You want 2 hens that are going to produce eggs for you all year.
I'm waiting for that negotiation to happen. That'd be so good. And you're right. Like there's fees that come up. I get questions about myself is like the appraisal. People will have covered it and said, yes, you've got the closing costs covered on paper. But the appraisal is interesting because sometimes the appraiser, they got to get paid before we get to the closing table.
Right.
And the seller's like, I'm only going to pay closing costs at the closing table. So we have to discuss when that gets paid, how it gets paid, whose credit card is going to go on. And those conversations are key. And that's where buyers and their lenders and their realtors, they need to be on the same page about what to expect. So nobody's disappointed. Right. Nobody's feeling taken advantage of. So it's huge.
I think communication across the board with brokers, mortgage brokers, buyers and sellers. I think communication is huge,
right?
And it can just make that process so much smoother.
I like it. Perfect. Well, we've hit our 30-minute mark. I mean, it's been great. I feel like there could be a part 2 coming. We didn't even cover one of them. That one topic that I was excited about. We may have a little bit of time to go over. It was no. You know what? We're going to save it for another one.
Let's do another one.
We'll do another one. I think it'll be good. But we thank you all for joining us. Shane, I appreciate it so much, man. It's been great having you.
Thank you guys.
More to come. We'll talk to you guys on the next one.
All right.
And then here's the awkward turn it off.